Ian and his husband Danny met on Plenty of Fish 17 years ago, and they knew from the second date that they both wanted to create a family. They also knew that they wanted that family to be created through adoption. Now they are parents to a wonderful 13-year-old son, Carson. Ian is many things: a father, a husband, an educator, but he's also an author. And we are going to spend time this week talking about RJ and the wonderful book he created. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited today to be talking to Ian. And before I even say welcome, Ian, I want to say one of the things that I love about the work that I do, about this podcast, is the community that it creates. And so Ian's name was brought to me by a friend of mine about a year ago, and I dropped the ball in reaching out. So someone else reached out. And now that I've been poked a couple of times, I am so excited to finally have the chance to sit down and chat with you. So before we talk about who you are professionally and how people may already know your name, please tell everybody a little bit about who you are and the members of your family.
Hi, I'm Ian. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an out and proud gay husband, father, and teacher and author. So I wear lots of hats, like so many folks. I'm married. My husband is Danny, and we have one 13-year-old son named Carson. He's actually away at camp this week, summer camp, enjoying all that summer camp has to offer. And he's almost 13.
It goes fast, doesn't
It goes so fast.
it?
It has absolutely flown. It's a blink, and we're at 13.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. 28, 25, and 20 in our house or in our family for the children. And I don't know. I don't know how it happened.
And that's the thing that's so cool about having this conversation to me, anyways, is that we know couples who are younger than us and they're trying to build families. And while it's been a while, we do think that, we've been able to add something to their journey and be a
Yep.
sounding board and also be an example of like, this is what this looks like at 13 years. But if you've known me for 5 years, then you knew what we looked like at 8 and
Yep.
13 and everything in between. So it is still feels really still relevant. Like it doesn't really change. And as we navigate
No.
systems, I don't think it matters the age of your child.
No. No. Although I do find that the older my kids get, the more I miss them being little and needing me more. Is that the wrong thing to say? Parents who are listening who have little children are probably going, there's actually going to be a time when my children will need me less. Yes, it happens.
Yeah, my son's at summer camp this week, and I feel a little bit like an unanchored boat. Like it's
Right?
sort of floating around because the thing that normally defines much of our summertime days is now not here, and it's noticeable. But I mean, it's a good independent activity for him and for us, but still noticeable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When did you and Danny meet? How did you meet?
We met on the internet
Oh,
back in the days of Plenty of Fish,
oh,
for those listeners in the generation, and we emailed back and forth for a while and got to dating. Oh gosh, this is 17 years ago, and we've been married for 15 years this
wow.
summer actually. So we've had a good long journey together, which has been amazing and very wonderful. And actually, it was one of the things that we talked about, I think probably on our second date, was do you want a parent?
Hmm.
Um, Danny was already sort of committed to that journey, even if he had to do it on his own,
Right,
and had started to take a few early steps. And he was like, one, if you're not interested in parenting, then we will not continue to date.
right,
And I said yes, but also, can we spend some time investing in and developing our relationship and then go down that journey together?
right.
And he was certainly willing to do that with me. It was fast and furious, but perfectly delightful. And it was one of the things that bonded us together really early on.
I think that most of us know from a young age that we want to be parents. And so having that conversation early on, especially when you know that you can't just get pregnant, you can't just have a baby, you're going to need to invest time and money into the process, means that conversation needs to happen sooner rather than later so that you know whether or not you want to invest emotionally into this relationship. That's reasonable to me.
Yeah, and it's important to us too to mention, I always knew I wanted to parent, like you said, but Danny always knew that he wanted to have an adoption journey
Okay.
as he built his family. So that was always foremost in his mind, was really committed to an adoption journey, not certainly as any kind of savior of anybody else, but also like we grew up in an era before there was the science
Right.
and many forms to build a family. It didn't really seem accessible. We knew a few families that were being built through IVF and surrogacy and other means at the time that we were building ours, but it felt very out of reach for us even 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So adoption was always our choice and always where we were starting that journey of family building, which I think is really neat. I don't think a way about other forms of family building,
Yeah.
but that was really important to us, and I think we've actually enjoyed that aspect of how we built and continue to sort of grow as a family.
There are an awful lot of people who, whether they are carrying their own children or not, at some point know that they want adoption to be part of their process. And so I have met many families who have done both, many families who've only done adoption, and many families who've only done carrying their own children or having their own child carried for them. So don't think that any of us have a right to have an opinion about how somebody else does it. It is beautiful that we in our community probably give more time and energy to thinking about how we want to grow our family or create our families than cisgendered heterosexual couples might, because they just assume that it's going to be done in a quote unquote traditional fashion for the most part, I think.
We were fairly agnostic in our religious beliefs, but we still felt as though this is our child
Yeah.
and this is the person who we were meant to raise and love, and we were meant to be loved by in return. So
Mhm.
that has always been very much in place all along. It wasn't just sort of like who we got. And
Yeah.
I've had that question asked to me, and it was like, no, like I actually think the universe brought this family together.
Yeah.
This is my son, and I never felt any different from even when he was in utero, which
Yeah.
is really interesting to think about. We also come from families that weren't defined only by biology. There's adoption in our family history,
Okay.
on both families. So my partner's family and my family, and then we both have step parents who we grew up with, who we're very attached to, and that we care very deeply for as well. So it was sort of like, yeah, we understand really early on that biology is not the only way to build a family, and these people who come into our lives are meant to be there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you say that even in utero
Mm.
suggests to me that you went a private adoption route versus a public adoption route. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I'm just picking words out.
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, we had a private adoption in 2013.
Okay, excellent. Was there a reason why you chose to go with private versus public, or did you look at both options, or?
We certainly looked at both options. Certainly, courses here in Ontario that we sort of have to go through, the Pride course, as it's sort of known for in here anyways. It talks about all of the options.
Mhm.
We knew international was not an option essentially because it's about open and closed doors and international forms of adoption laws and processes that would not necessarily include us. We looked at public, and we were certainly sort of ready to submit our paperwork for public as well. Certainly, if we didn't feel like we were getting anywhere with private, but for me personally, I really wanted to have as much of the journey as possible.
Right.
And while we have friends who have adopted publicly with infants as well, we have that in utero birth story in the hospital every day of every moment story to tell,
Yeah.
for ourselves and
Yep.
for our sons. So that was really, I was very interested in that, and I was the parent who took a year off of work when our child was born as well. I was able to. We
Hmm.
would have split that were we able to, but we weren't. So
Right. Yeah.
all of that, starts to say, no, I want every moment of this story. I think that was sort of the maybe the one thing that reads a little bit selfish in that journey is to say, no, like this is something I'm really invested in. I wanted every diaper change and I wanted every fever and I wanted every spit up. And there was a lot of spit up. We
Right.
had that
Yes.
baby who just couldn't keep anything down. I just wanted the whole thing. And I really loved that.
That's all the reason that you need to have is it's what you wanted, and so that's the route you chose.
I think too, like that's really hard because our journey was a roller coaster of private adoption. We were what we'd say is adoption ready, with all the social workers and the book is made and all of the sort of procedural things that you do when you're on that journey for about a year and a half
Okay.
before we connected with our son's biological mother.
Mhm.
And it was a roller coaster. We had lots of people reaching out through websites. We met several, women who were carrying children. We had phone calls with others. Like it is quite a journey to feel like, oh, is this our child? Like, especially in that mentality of this is the family we're meant to be, and this is the
Mhm.
child who's meant to love me and that I'm meant to love. That's hard because it's sort of
Yeah.
like, well, those things didn't work out. And at the time, you have to think, well, that could be this is ours. This is the universe bringing us ours. And then we
Yeah.
have to sort of accept that it wasn't because that parent made a different choice. That biological mom made another choice or decided to parent themselves or. So that was the a big part of our journey, I think, too.
And it is, and that's a story I hear often from people. And that's for many people, that's one of the reasons that public adoption feels like something they can't investigate for themselves because it feels as though and I fully understand both sides. I can see the whole picture. If the goal is to reunite families and you happen to be a beautiful stepping stone, a place of rest and respite for a child while their parent heals so that they can be reunited, you want that for the family. However, there are hearts on the line and you invest your heart. And so when you get a call and say, I think we have a match for you, you you invest your heart in it. And then but it's hard not to be guarded in how much of your heart you share until those papers are signed, I would think.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, even in the private adoption process, at the time, I go 13 years ago, this was the law. I have no idea
Right.
if any of this has changed necessarily, but
Fair.
the signing of consent is not before the birth or even at birth. It was at least 7 days after. Our
Right.
son's consent was signed at 14 days, which then triggered another 3.5 weeks or something, I think, legal journey to revoking consent. So we were a family in my eyes for 5 weeks before even it was sort of really, felt super permanent, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And you carry that. I didn't realize it at the time, but we were really carrying that for that time period. And after we'd sort of exited that time of revoking consent by a biological parent, then it was felt like it was okay. Now we can breathe a little bit
Right.
more. We didn't even understand because you also have a newborn at home, and so
Sure.
everything's just been upside down anyways.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I'm worried because I haven't slept or the baby's not eating or all these things. But it was also, I think, underneath it, like this concern, this fear that consent would be revoked or changes would come. And that was I was very confident, I would say, and we had built a relationship with our son's biological mother, such that that confidence was reinforced.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean anything couldn't happen.
Sure. I want to revisit something, a phrase that you're using, and this has come up more in conversations that I've had with people recently, and even with the conversation that I had with Kate McMahon about the language that we use and what language we use with our children. You have used the word biological mother.
Mhm.
Is that the phrase that you use with Carson? And how did you land on that? For some people, the word mother assigns a role in the like an active role in a person's life. And I'm not judging. I'm asking. I'm for simply for clarification.
Yeah, we might have even just done that some of that without thinking about our language choices. So
Right.
it's really nice to be able to go, huh, maybe that's a great. great dinner conversation this week, even, or even frankly, we have a bright 13-year-old child. We should have that conversation with him
Right.
and say, how do you want to refer to this person? So we would also use her name and respectfully, like, I'm not sharing her
No, of
name,
course. Thank you.
obviously, but so we often just refer to her by name. We
Right.
when we're talking as a family or seeing something, online or connecting with these folks, we use their names and we have no
Mm.
reason not to with him. He knows who everybody is.
Right.
I think when he was younger, it was a cuter term, like it was tummy mummy would be sort of more used. Now we would probably use biological mother because we have a 13-year-old and we don't need to sort of infantilize the language.
Right.
But then, genetically speaking, and as far as genealogy goes, it does for me make sense to refer to this person as, a female identifying biological source of your genetic code. Like
Yeah.
what other language to be used? And again, I'm open to suggestions, certainly, and it's worth looking ourselves, but we were never really challenged by that.
Hmm.
But I also think that we don't have a person who ever really inserted herself in his world in a way that would make her judge, comment, or do something that was very mother-like. So I
Right.
don't feel that sort of like, oh, that's not confusing for her. That's not confusing for us. We know what our roles are in
Yeah.
our sense of open adoption. We also have a biological father in the picture of our open adoption and who has legal rights and has connections, very different relationships in very two different directions. But
Hmm.
we know this person and the life that they've built since Carson was born. And that's another part of it too. I guess it's sort of like we never really we didn't say tummy daddy.
Right.
Conversations were different there. I'm not sure why, and if my son is curious about something, he's sort of curious in both directions.
Right.
It's never just about this one person. I think again, outsiders and people who I've had great conversations about our journey as even just a two-dad family as well as an adoptive family, what might say, well, like, oh, is he only interested in his biological mother? And
Right.
I said, no, like if he has questions about genetics or sameness or similarities or whatever, they're in both directions.
Right.
It's never one or the other, really. He doesn't sort of invest his curiosity in one over another person, or at least hasn't demonstrated that with us so far.
And I ask, as I say, because it's a conversation that I've had over time with a variety of different people, and people choose different words. In our house, it's donor, um, and that's all it's ever been. But I don't know why we chose that either. And
Yeah.
right, so it's just a curiosity more than anything, and it's something for people to think about if it's something that may be important to them to just to lay words to it, to assign words to how they're feeling.
Yeah.
There you go. That's your thought-provoking
Oh, yeah, I
statement
love
for
it.
the
I can't
morning.
wait to think about that later.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Jamil, host of Fatherhnetics. Fatherhnetics is a space for dads, future dads, and the people building families in all kinds of ways to come together and talk about what this journey actually looks like. Every week, I sit down with fathers and families building voices across the LGBTQ plus community and beyond. We talk about adoption, surrogacy, IVF, foster care, parenting relationships, and all the moments in between that shape us, even before we became dads. The exciting ones, the complicated ones, and the everyday stuff nobody really prepares you for, yeah, we talk about that too. What I love most about the community around these conversations is that real people end up sharing real stories, learning from each other, and reminding one another we're not doing this alone. So if you're on this path of parenthood, already raising kids, or just care about families and the stories behind them, come join us. Follow and subscribe to Fatherhnetics wherever you listen to podcasts, and find us on YouTube at fatherhnetics.com.
But speaking of words and the impact of words, that's a beautiful segue into life outside being a teacher and your other hat that you wear when you're not just being a dad, just being a husband, just being a teacher, all of the things. You are also an author, and you have come up with a beautiful little book. And I was hoping that you could take us through it a little bit. Tell us a bit about the background that prompted you to want to create this beautiful piece?
Oh, I loved children's literature and specifically picture books before I was a parent. I mean, I teach older grades, older
Hmm.
students, so it's always really nice to sort of explore that. I think it was, my longtime desire to be a parent knew that I would come across children's literature even in that journey at some point. But I had a small collection of books and some signed by authors work even before I started to write myself. We had so many stories, and frankly, it was my partner who said, "Why don't you write?" And it was like actually just before the pandemic. So people say, "Was that your pandemic hobby?" And I was like, "No, I was doing this before." But the pandemic certainly allowed us the time to step away from so many roles and so many activities and to try new ones. And that was certainly an investment. And so, yes, I am also a children's author. That is all very new to say. My book, RJ and the Ticking Clock, was written, oh my gosh, 6 years ago now, but was published in August 2025 with Owl Kids. And I'm going to shout out because I believe you should say our book, because this book is the product of myself, but also an illustrator, Scott Ritchie, who is a out gay man himself, who has contributed to many picture books in Canada and has authored some and certainly illustrated many, and absolutely also loves to see and represent queer families. So that was really important to me when my editors at Owl said, "Oh, who would you like to illustrate the book?" I said, your industry and the illustrators that exist out there. I would like to make sure that they're of the community as well,
Hmm.
to give another voice in the community an opportunity to express what they see when they see, like as a writer, I write the words on the page and they
Sure.
create the visual of the story, which is so like I've always been drawn into the visuals of story in very deep ways. So I'm so glad that we got to partner on this book that is our book. Writing this book, and it is about a kid with two dads. I hadn't even said that yet. It's about a kid who has two dads, and it having two dads is not the problem. Having two dads is not, it's not a coming out to his classmates.
Mhm.
It's not a sharing of those things. It's an invitation of to allyship would be how I define a
Okay.
really deep theme or essence of the book for me. Every reader makes their own sense of what they can learn from any text. This is something I know as a teacher and a writer.
Right.
In this case, this book, for me, its themes may not be what children and families see. They may see other things entirely. I had somebody reach out and say, "Oh, it's a criticism of school systems," and I was like, "I actually don't." And it was never written to be a criticism of a school system, and here's why I thought that.
Right.
So, because as a teacher, I don't feel that criticism is necessary. I don't think it's supportive either, and I don't think that's how we grow together, and evolve our systems through criticism. I think it's about learning
Very true.
because we're in a learning system. So
Yeah.
yeah, and the nature of it. I don't know, should like give you a synopsis of the book or give you the spoiler alerts now for our readers?
Well, that is fully up to you to decide. But before you do that, though, can you
Yeah,
tell me, because you raised a point that, in speaking with other authors who've done books that have pictures in them, maybe not picture books per se, but as you know, Denny Neville was on the podcast, and his is a chapter book, but it does have pictures in it. Kate McMahon was on the show. She's has an illustrator. Her books, again, are not picture books, but they're a little bit step forward from that. Scott took your words, as you said, and he illustrated from what he saw from your words. Now, when you saw Scott's illustrations, how did you feel about his interpretation? Did it line up well with how you had envisioned what the pictures might look like?
yeah, yeah, actually it really did. I
Okay,
certainly I would probably say that my mind's eye overcomplicates the image and doesn't know the industry. So this is where you do
fair.
rely on editors and publishers and
Sure.
and prolific illustrators like Scott. But I think the neat thing for me was I envisioned a bright, sunny classroom filled with different kinds of students and different kinds of learners, like a super diverse space, and that's what Scott created. So
Beautiful.
that was a real confidence. Again, when you have children in school, you see their classrooms, you see their peers, you see their classmates. So you sort of understand what that is. And I guess it was sort of like, well, is someone who doesn't themselves have a parent or isn't a parent and doesn't have children in that system. will they see what I see? And he did. Because and what the conversation was actually is that school hasn't changed that much.
Right.
And if I remember what school was like for me 40 years ago, that's a very long number of years ago, then yeah, his that book, that setting could still be the same today.
Beautiful.
Classrooms are big, beautiful classrooms haven't in their look haven't changed that much. And the dynamics of young people depicted in the story, classmates interacting with one another, I don't think that's changed much either. I could see the characters doing this 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So there's something timeless about a classroom setting, which really was the space for this story.
I love that.
And he captured it. He captured it so well. It was actually inspiring to see because it's sort of like how there's like children making art
Hmm.
in the story as well. They're making Father's Day cards, which of course is with diverse families that can be a whole thing, and we need to
Sure.
be thinking about that. And we represented a diversity of family in the stories. One child is making their card for an uncle, another for a grandfather, another for their dad. It doesn't ever have to be one person or one role. But it was so neat to see even how he represented children making art, and the child lens of creation was really part of that story as well. Scott did a beautiful job on our text. Yeah, it was great.
And I asked that because when you said that, when you said those words, what came to my mind was reading a book as even as an adult, and then seeing a movie that has been created from that book and thinking that lines up, that doesn't. So I wasn't sure how much communication you and Scott had and whether or not he had conveyed it, but it sounds like he was spot on. He spent some time living in your brain or something like that and came up with the image.
Again, it's sort of maybe we were meant to work together on that book because in the end, I don't think we did communicate much, but what was created when I started to see my editor shared some pencil drawings and some early pages with me, I said, yes, absolutely. So that was it's an easy pairing for me. I'm really proud of our sort of disconnected collaboration.
Hey,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's the best way to make it work.
Yeah,
You
it
do
was
yours in
great.
silo, I'll do mine, and then they
And
blend
look what we
together.
made. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Do you do you want to touch briefly on what the book is about sort of highlight, or do you want to keep people curious so that they go and find the book?
Oh, I know how to stage a cliffhanger, so here goes. The main character is RJ. He has two dads, and they're getting ready for Father's Day. So they're wonderful sort of opportunities to explore what that looks like in any family's household or any big upcoming event. It could be a birthday, it could be an anniversary, it could be a religious celebration, it could be a celebration of any parent on any kind of parenting or associated days. So we got to meet his family a little bit, and then he's at school and they're making cards, and there's just not enough time to make two cards.
Hmm.
And he's really committed. RJ is very committed to making two cards, but the time's not working out, and the anxiety peaks as a result. The beauty of the story for me lies in while he is sort of maybe freaking out a little bit and working on one card, because that's all sort of has time for. He sort of resigns himself to it. His teacher and classmates have found the time to make a second card so that he'll have one for each parent. And it's a lovely, touching moment, unexpected in the way the story addresses it, and really, really a lot of fun. To see what those kids created was perhaps the most touching thing for me because, and this is all in the illustration, not in the writing at all, but the illustrations show that the card that they made showed that the students and teacher also knew what RJ and his dads did together, both of them, not just one or the other.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow, like that's really great. It means they know their friend,
yeah.
and they love that friend enough to say, this is your family, and we love that about you. So it's something really beautiful. And then that's not said. That's what you read into the story.
It is a beautiful story, and it is a conversation that I often hear people who are same-sex parents raising a child as events like Mother's Day or Father's Day approach. How will the school system handle that? How will my child handle that? How do I help support the school? How do I help support the teacher in the classroom? How do I help support my child so that they don't feel overwhelmed by the fact that their family looks different than some of the other kids in class. And the way that you handled it in the book, just, it was a book that I wish that we had had when our kids were small. There, that's what I mean.
I think the learning is the theme for me is about deeply about allyship,
Yeah.
and recognition, celebrating families absolutely of all kinds every time. This is important to my own role as an educator and as a member of a larger community. But the allyship that the students showed is a learning to those students is like recognize that some families are different and that some days might need a little bit different treatment or at least a different kind of awareness of the other people that we share space with. We share so much in common human to human, but that there are things that are unique about us that we'd love to pull in and pull out and sort of like recognize and explore. So I do think there's an invitation for students to learn about how to do that and what that can look like.
Mhm.
Just as you can learn how to support somebody when they're ill, or if they've experienced loss, or if they're preparing for a celebration. So many children's stories, especially picture books, explore how do we help others. This
Right.
is another form of help. And like when we teach really little kids, it is how do we help one another? What are you doing to help? Are you a helper?
Right.
How are how are you showing up with helping hands? This is all language from even how we raised our sons. So really cool to sort of apply that. And it's authentic. We had a kid going to school, they're doing Father's Day crafts and activities, and sometimes teachers and daycare workers and stuff would, and education assistants, they would ask us, what would you like us to do? We always said, well, whatever he wants to do. Our son is not a crafty kid. So all these crafts, making two of them was just not his energy most of the time. But there was an age, and I would say it's probably around that like 5 or 6 age where he was like, no, I want to make two.
Right.
Like I have two, so I'm going to make two. And
Right.
he would miss activities that the other kids were doing that he might have even wanted to do so that he could make a second. And so like that really authentic, like, yeah, you have two dads and there's this thing that's happening in those younger grades, that you want to prepare for. And he always tended to come home with two things. But I always said to him, you never have to make two. I don't want
Mhm.
you to miss out on the fun. And he's like, no,
Right.
I have to make two. And this is a very young child speaking some real wisdom into the universe as a two dad family.
I think though that's sort of the peak age where they start to appreciate the connection they have with their peers and how much their peers like them, and that there are two parents who love him very much and have always been there and supportive of him, and he doesn't want either one of them to think he loves one more than the other. And they worry about that at a young age, right? Whereas as parents looking down, we can say to them, I know you love me just as much as you love your other dad. I don't worry about that. In their heart, they feel like if I choose to do one for one parent or one for both, then they won't both think that they're super special or something like that. It's hard to know how their little brains work, but they're still very much in that concrete mindset that hasn't quite shifted to abstract thinking. So they need two dads, two cards, got to do it so they both know I love
Yeah.
them. Which,
And that's lovely. Like it's a gift to receive love as a family anytime. And we
sure.
are not, we don't hang our hearts only on Father's Day,
No,
and
no,
we're
of
not
course.
suddenly devastated at Mother's Day or Christmas. Like these are, yes, big milestone sort of calendar dates that someone else has created for us to sort of recognize and celebrate. But when those things come up and a 5-year-old is confronted with them, or a 6-year-old, or now a 13-year-old is confronted with them, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And so, like it's just allowing, I guess it's raising any young person to decide how and in what way will they show love as well is I think another part of it. And it doesn't have to be both at the same time, one versus the other. And as a couple, we're not sitting in a space competing for love.
Nope.
We're just parents and we share all the parenting roles in our family.
Yeah.
Um, none are discerned by our gender or biology. And so in that way, it's like, well, we're not competing for who gets to be dad. Like that, we have two loving parents, and our son is evolving his own sort of language, his nomenclature for his his parents to describe us, like we were talking about before. Like,
Hmm.
how do you come up with these terms? And now at 13, he gets to decide how he differentiates between two dads in a household. Like, whatever's natural to him. I always say, as long as he doesn't call me a swear word, we're good.
Right.
Like I was like, yeah, that's fine. No problem. And they're fun and playful and affectionate and certainly revered in our house.
Yeah. Well, and we assign names to ourselves before our kids can talk. I'm, whether it's mama and mommy or dada and papa or whatever it is. And then they get to an age where they're just like dad, and it's almost like by the tone of their voice, you know which of you they're speaking to because they just call you both dad and right?
Yes, I think that's probably where we will end up. I was always daddy for a long time, and just like now I just go like you don't walk into a room at 13-year-olds
Yeah.
don't walk around calling out for parents necessarily.
It's true.
We also live in our teeny tiny Toronto townhouse. Like we're not out of earshot, so
Yeah. Yeah.
he's not calling me by my first name, which I'm not opposed to if he decides that's how he wants to refer to me. But he also doesn't go daddy
Yeah.
unless he's giving me the eye roll. Um, you know,
Right. Which
and
happens.
he's, or like asking me to spend some money. But yeah, again, I think that's sort of neat. You watch your family grow in lots of ways, and that I think is not just a queer experience.
Yeah.
Like, how do we call our parents and how do we refer to them and interact with them?
Yeah. What's next? Is there another book percolating now?
Oh, there's so many books percolating. I have continued to write manuscripts for the last 4 years since RJ and the Ticking Clock was finished. I haven't had any contracts yet for those books with publishers in Canada, but my writing has grown as well, which is through that journey and through learning and reading lots of other picture books and being part of a great community. So I'm always saying, it's coming, it's just not here yet.
Yep.
But all of my writing continues to find ways to explore authentically queerness. Family is certainly a theme. What does it mean to express yourself is also a part of it. I love when stories just happen to have queer elements to them, but it's not the centerpiece of the
Hmm.
story.
Yep.
And I also love to explore things that some would describe as queer coded. Like to me, I'm just like, oh, this is a story about brunch.
Right.
And like that just I think our community needs to own that thing that is brunch, right? But I know that we don't. But I'm like, it feels very queer to me.
100%.
And it also feels very queer and authentically queer to just gather. So, like
Yes.
stories of gathering or stories of non-normative expressions of gender and interest and identity. All of those kinds of things have sort of found their ways into the manuscripts that I create. And so I actually just sent out some new manuscripts to publishers this week. I'm always looking for the next one. And I know there's so many more stories to tell.
Yeah. Where
Hmm.
can people find them?
Oh, RJ and the Ticking Clock, your local independent booksellers. If they don't have it on the shelf, you can always order it from them. I'm a big supporter of independent booksellers everywhere. You can order it from Amazon and you can order it from Indigo. So whether you are in the States or internationally, or if you're in Canada, they're there. And in many of those bookstores, they will carry them. So yeah, I always say our book, RJ and the Ticking Clock, it is on many shelves.
Yes.
And you can also follow my Instagram for updates on my author journey
I love
at
that.
Ian_Duncan_PB for picture book.
Before I let you go,
Yeah,
the same question I ask everybody. What is your very, very favorite part of parenting Carson?
we are a very cuddly family and we are a deeply connected family, like the three of us. We heard a lot early on from social workers who were supporting our journey about attachment parenting and really making sure he feels attached. Oh boy, is he attached. We are cuddly still. We are connected still. Carson's a tactile kid. He'll still reach out and lock arms with you as he sort of boldly strides down the street. He likes to, if you're sitting on the couch, he's not at the other end. He's literally going to press himself next to you with his book or his Nintendo or whatever that looks like. So, yeah, I think that's my favorite part is probably responding to something we worry deeply about as adoptive parents at the very early stage. Will this child be attached to us? What will that look like? Will psychology and an adoptive psychology dominate this child's life? And instead, it's been so many other things. I think the love of our family dominates our child's life, and
Perfect.
and and honestly, it's been so great to be able to just that's the vision, is like that kid curled up next to you on the couch and making little boy jokes and watching shows together on the TV and reading side by side and having him read manuscripts that I create and having him giggle his way through things. So I think it's that attachment. It's my favorite thing. It's just how close knit we have been able to become, and that's partly due to our son's personality and who he is and what his needs are. But yeah, we're like that as a couple too. We're a strongly bonded married couple with
Right.
that clear attachment. So it was really lovely to build a family that we didn't know if that attachment would come, and it did, and it's wonderful. It's my favorite thing is couch time.
Love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And he'll be back next week for more couch time after
Yes.
after a week at camp.
Yeah, I think he'll be very excited to be back from camp. He's not the most rugged of child, so
There you go. So there'll be reading and Nintendo time in short order once he gets home.
it's coming. He's counting down, I bet.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and for telling the world about RJ.
Thank you for having me. It's a real treat to share the story, and I'm grateful. Thanks.
I want to take a moment to acknowledge the stolen land I live and work on, because where we are matters. I live in Burlington, Ontario, Canada, and I carry colonial lineage. That's something I hold with both awareness and responsibility. The land stretching from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond has a history that runs so much deeper than the city I live in. It's Indigenous land, rich with story, relationship, and meaning, and my community benefits from that legacy every single day. This territory is held under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, a powerful agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and allied nations to share and care for the resources of the Great Lakes region together, peacefully. I also want to specifically recognize that I'm on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As a queer person, I find myself coming back to the land as a teacher, and one of the most profound things it teaches us is fluidity. The gender binary and heteropatriarchy didn't emerge from this land. They were brought here by colonizers, the same people who tore Indigenous children from their families, their homes, and everything they knew. Those children were then sorted into one of only two rigidly prescribed categories and forced to perform a version of gender that was never theirs to begin with. That violence was deliberate, and its echoes are still very much with us. But the land has never operated in binaries. It is diverse, layered, beautifully complex, and sometimes wonderfully unpredictable. It holds all of us, every path, every identity, every way of moving through the world. Every organism, every spirit has a purpose. That's something I try to carry with me as I move through my own life and growth. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.